It's the county conversation, and T20 finals day is upon us. And to preview the event, rather than get into the analytical weeds, we thought we'd get a behind-the-scenes view of what the day actually entails from a man who, by our maths, has been there more than anyone else other than James Vince and Liam Dawson. We didn't want to talk to them. We thought they're boring, dull. Don't mean that.
We said, who's been the third most times?
and they actually play 4-day cricket. So
no words.
So joining myself and Nick Friend, who turned 30 yesterday, very important information for everyone to know this week, is Hampshire's Chris Wood. Chris, A, welcome. B, by our count, you have been to finals day in 2010, 2012, 13, 14, 15, 17, 21, 22, and 23. You've won 3 of them in 2010, 2012, and 2022. Almost to the intro. So to start off, just how unique a day is it in the context of your career? What does the day symbolize to you?
Yeah, it's right up there, to be honest. I think if you ask any county cricketer around the circuit outside of people that played for England, it's probably the one day on the calendar that everybody wants to be involved in at some given time throughout the career. And we're very fortunate to have some very good sides, and as you said, been there a fair few times, and it's evolved throughout the years, but it's right up there. And I can only imagine it comes very close to kind of winning the championship, which I have unfortunately haven't been close to doing.
Can I ask, did you go in 2011? Because Hampshire went and you played in the group. You just didn't play.
Yeah,
you didn't play in the semi. That's as.
Don't bring this up.
Tell you. Well, because that would bring you level with Liam and James.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah, so
on coach journeys to Edgbaston.
Yeah, I was actually thinking when you said there about behind Dawson Vincent, and I was having a think about which one. And you're right. Is that the Somerset Super Over? I think it might be. And
no.
They all kind of roll into one a little bit. But I did
it's
go.
Not very helpful for this, mate. we can get to find memories.
No, 2011 was when Leicester won it, but you guys lost it was rain affected. Oh, sorry, yeah, you're right, correct. The one you said, the Super Over. Yeah.
Yeah.
As you were.
I remember it well, and I was 100% there. Yeah. And if I remember correctly, I think lost 8 semi-finals and won it 3 times. I haven't got to the final and lost, which is crazy.
Correct.
So talk us through it. When does the day start in terms of the context of, right, we've got finals day. You've got semi-final 1, semi-final 2. When do you find that out?
Yeah, it's always relatively late, and that's always the question that's floating around the changing rooms. A few days out, what game are we going to be? Is it going to be the first one? Is it going to be second one? Because although they often plan for a decent amount of time throughout the intervals, it always gets shortened for whatever reason. The game goes on, and it's actually a lot of guys have preferences to whether you play the first or second one and rush into the final. And I guess without being certain, I think you find out a couple of days before. And you get a message on the group, and it's like, right, we're leaving to Edgbaston the day before. This is our training slot. We've got 2 hours. And if I'm right in saying, I think it's done geographically depending on what game's first and second.
Okay.
You might shoot me down there, but I've heard that along the way to do with like how far fans have got to travel. Which I don't know if that is the reason. I don't know why you only find that out 2 or 3 days before, with the quarterfinals often being before that. But yeah, it's an interesting dynamic for sure.
What do you have a preference? What, like you've said, obviously you've been enough times. Do you prefer sort of, I guess, like the early start of the first semi, or do you feel, I don't know, almost like more involved in the day if you're in the second one?
I've got to be brutally honest. My first experience in 2010, which we went on to win, we played the first game, and it was actually at the Rose Bowl at the time, now Utility Bowl. And, we played that first game. We were twiddling our thumbs thinking, what are we going to do now? And we ended up going down to David Lloyd, and you find people sleeping, you get a bit lethargic. And I actually think if you asked me in those early finals days, I would have 100% said second game. So you can just roll in with your form into the final. But now I'm a bit of an old dog, and I've got a few niggles. the one that we won a couple of years ago, I remember we played the second game, then we obviously had Lancs in the final, and I think we had something crazy, like a 45-minute turnaround. The toss was almost like immediate, and we were all in the change room, and there's a quick analyst meeting around Lancs, and I'm cramping in my calves, I'm on the physio bed, and he's going to work, and the lads are just like shattered. So I think in my younger self, when I had a lot more energy, it would have been second roll into the final. But actually now, I think that get maybe that little bit of time in between games to just rest, even go back to the hotel and just chill for a bit. But I think you'd get a very conflicting answers from a lot of people.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, whether there was like a consensus or not. But as you're saying, it's kind of seems split down the middle. I remember chatting to you a number of years ago about finals day. And you mentioned that I think it was the year before Hampshire won in 2022. So it was 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys were saying how you'd been to 5 different hotels. Lost the 5 previous semi-finals and you tried 5 different hotels. Like, what, as a club that's been there so often, you must know Birmingham like the back of your hand. Like, what are the routines of the day? Like, do you have the same coffee spot you're heading to? Have you guys settled on a hotel now that you won in 2022? Like, what's the kind of makeup? What's the Chris Wood day in Birmingham like?
Yeah, well, you say, have we settled on a hotel? No, but the answer is no, because the year we won it, I can't remember exactly which hotel it was now, but it was the one with the rooftop outside the top, at the top of the Broad Street. And then
it sounds like something you discovered after the final.
Yeah, absolutely. And then last year we were somewhere different, right? So right. The club clearly haven't learned, and actually, I don't think it's down to the club. I think the ECB actually allocate the hotels to the clubs. But yeah, I think for me, I'm a terrible sleeper, full stop. So that night before finals day is just written off for me. I'll be up all night, nervous, whatever it is. And then it's all about, getting up in the morning and going for a coffee and then starting your day, really, depending on which game you're playing in.
And if you are kind of getting to the ground, there's obviously like the temporary changing rooms. I'm trying to work out like how you, I guess maybe it's got a bit more common with like the 100 and double headers, but like there's those changing rooms on the other side of the ground at Edgbaston. Like, what's the get up there? Are they kind of fit for purpose? If you wanted to have a warm up, if you wanted to have a bowl through, is it possible? Or is it just like, right, this is the biggest day of the season, we're just going to sit in this conference room over in the other stand at Edgbaston and wait?
It is. We've actually been over the other side more often than not, to be honest.
Conspiracy.
And you're right. It's very much like a little conference room, nice and cozy, not much space. And like you're right. It's not logistically possible to just go, I want to go and have a bowl. You often have to walk round to the nets, and then you've got both teams there, and you've got to go through the crowd, and they're shouting at you. And the turnarounds are just often so fast, especially if you're in that second game. You often arrive like halfway through the first game, and especially as the bowlers, because often the bowlers don't want to bowl to a batsman before a game. You'll see before the games they're all bowling to a mitt bowl through, and it's just nowhere possible to do that. So it is very much rushed, and a lot of people's routines do get taken out of the day. Fortunately, I'm not. Certainly, as I've got older, I'm not too set on routines and having to bowl 45 minutes before the game or whatever it is. But I do think it does affect certain individuals for sure.
Here's a stat for you, or a quiz question for you both. Who were the last winners to play the first semi-final?
Oh no!
Really?
I
obviously a while back for sure.
I have no idea.
I'm just gonna throw it out there. I'm gonna go North Ants.
Not quite that far. So there's not been a first semi-final champion since 2018.
Wow. Okay.
So maybe it is a thing. Maybe there should be consensus.
Yeah, maybe that momentum is a thing.
But I wonder, and this is getting far more crickety than I intended. But it's Cam's looking at me, a worried man.
I know where you're eventually going to ask a question, but
it becomes, as the day goes on, like who can best cope with like this increasingly tired pitch, doesn't it? So there is a bit of that. Like if you play on the fresh one in the morning, it's very different to what it is when Simon Harmer's bowling his 8th over of the day in 2019 or whatever. Like presumably there is actually we're talking about you want to have a stretch, you want to have a coffee, and you want to go to the gym the 4 hours between. But there is probably also fundamentally just quite a big cricket advantage to having played in the 80th over on that pitch of the day rather than the first, I suppose.
Yeah, 100%. You're definitely right. And actually, we've seen it, in the earlier years, people just tend to play with that same 11, whether it was the semi-final and the final. But you have seen over the past few years that teams are bringing in spinners for the final who didn't play if they played in the first semi-final, for example. So 100%, it has to be a factor, doesn't it? Has to be.
This is the question I was going to ask you, and this is still on the semi-finals. I've always wondered this. So the other thing with the first semi that I've always thought is a bit of like a rough deal. Is so you go up the day before, whatever. You've got this dream, this brilliant day that ends. If it goes well, you probably leave the field for the final time at 11-ish, 11:30, back in the change rooms and God knows what. But if you lose the first semi, do you just go home?
Well, talking from a lot of experience,
you got the right man here.
The answer's no. We've never been home after losing that first semi-final. I think ultimately it's you build yourself up. You build yourself up for this massive day, and then you lose the semi-final, and you know what, you have that lull of a couple of hours, but then it's an opportunity to just try and let your hair down and enjoy yourself. You've worked so hard to get to this day, and it doesn't go the way you want it to go. I think that first initial moment feeling is, let's get the hell out of here. I don't want to be here anymore. Let's go home. And then people, get over it pretty quickly and understand that it's professional sport and you can't win every game.
Do you? So you don't go home. Do you watch the cricket?
Me personally, no. I couldn't think of anything worse. I'll give myself an hour, then get straight on the beers. What tends to happen is, we hang around for an opportunity for people to maybe watch the first innings. And then we can go back and even over the years, a couple of players have stuck around and watched the final, and we sort of reconvene in the hotel as a group later on that evening. But 90% of the group just want to, slowly pack up, have a beer, go back to the hotel, and if it's on the TVs, watch it. But then just enjoy companies before, you go off 2 days later to play in the championship somewhere.
Well, I was going to say, because that's the other side of it. So the other extreme is if you win, it's obviously different for you because you've always been quite white ball oriented, but for a lot of guys, you win. And it was 2019 where Essex beat Worcestershire in the final, and then had the championship shootout against Somerset, literally 48 70 hours later. Do you get to enjoy it? Because it is the big. I don't think it's being out of turn to say it's the biggest day in the domestic calendar, isn't it? It's what, and it's a bloody long competition from end of May to mid-September. But it feels like you win it, and then, as you say, half the guys who are white ball only can go and enjoy it and drink it in, I guess metaphorically, literally, whatever. And then the other guys are going right, well, Sussex away in 2 days.
Well, we had that exact thing when we won it, 2 years ago. We won, and we had half the team going home on the bus the next day, the white ballers, and we had half the team. I can't remember where they were going, but they were going on for a 4-day game so it would have been the Monday, starting on the Monday. And you look at that, right, and you go, it's just crazy. I can't speak with complete confidence, but I vaguely remember back in the day, you had finals day, then there was no sign of a championship game for at least 72 hours beyond. But that's the world we live in, right? And the amount of cricket we play. And do you enjoy it? I think if you win it, the answer is absolutely yes. And probably from Hampshire's point of view, we haven't been going on to that championship game 48 hours later with a chance to win the title. But a team like Essex, who you said there, who are in with a shout, it does not dampen it, but in the back of your mind, you are thinking, right, we have got to go and stick on our whites in 48 hours time, which is mad.
It reminds me, it's got real, it's that ODI series in Australia, isn't it? After England won the T20 World Cup.
Yeah.
It's like the last, it's like, it should be a very long way from your mind
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember being out in Australia for that, and England won the World Cup. Amazing, brilliant. And then like Butler's in a press conference 2 days later, being like, "How are you shaping up for this bilateral?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's really important." I was like, "It's not, Joss, and you know it's not. None of us care about this. You don't care about it. I don't care about it."
They didn't play like they can.
Remarkable.
So Gloucestershire play Sussex on Tuesday, so next Tuesday, in a 4-day game.
Do they?
With Sussex, I would guess could potentially seal promotion in that round, and yet they're playing each other at 2:15 on the Saturday beforehand. If you offered Gloucester a chance to win one of those right now, they'd go and do a deal at the toss, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
shake hands with tomorrow, like you lads, you can have Tuesday.
I think both teams might do that, to be honest.
If we can have today, you can have Tuesday.
I feel like this is the strongest argument I've heard in favour of signing a white ball only contract ever. I'm hearing Will Smead. I get it now. I get it. Just go win the Plas and have a great time.
Yeah.
Chris, we wanted to ask you about, because 2 of your 3 wins have been 2 of the most kind of insane finals ever, basically, and kind of just a bit of a trip down memory lane. And so we're going to walk through, set the scene a little bit for the audience, because unsurprisingly, I imagine that all of them will have the details of the 2010 Glass final kind of off the top of their head.
Essentially, why can't you win normally?
Yeah, exactly. That's where we're getting to.
Yeah.
So in 2022, the most recent one was a one-run win against Lancashire. And in 2010, Hampshire won on fewer wickets against Somerset. And so basically what's happened in 2010 was, chasing 171, Hampshire needed 4 off 2, and Dan Christian has pulled a hamstring, turning for 2 on the penultimate ball. Yeah. So it's now needed 2 off 1. You get a runner. The ground staff have to come on and paint fresh lines so the umpires can see if the runner gets himself in.
Yeah.
Last ball, massive LBW appeal, which, having watched it yesterday, doesn't look too far off.
Yeah.
And you guys scamper through for a single, and it just descends into carnage. Can you just talk us through like your memories of that final over?
Yeah. I think as a naive 19-year-old, for a start, it was absolutely bonkers. And I've had to watch it back various times since and just go, you know what, did that actually happen? And some of it, it does sort of jump your memory, because so much happened in that last over. It was unbelievable. And actually, if you watch it back, we should have lost that game, because Jimmy Adams, I believe was the runner. I think he and Dan Christian run. So there was a period of time, I think it was about 10 seconds, where the umpires are standing there waiting for Somerset to run Jimmy or Dan out, whichever one it was, and they just didn't. So they had to call the game, which is remarkable, right? And then you've got, I remember sitting next to Chris Benham, I can't remember, to my left or to my right. One of the most hyperactive young lads that I've come across on the cricket field, absolute beauty. And he keeps grabbing my leg every time something's happening, and then I just remember him getting up and run on the pitch, and there's 3 or 4 of us behind him just about to sprint on, and there's just this massive delay. And everyone's like, what's going on? We've just ran and won. No one's got any idea that Jimmy and Dan Christian, one of them's at the wrong end, and there's just this silence, about 10 seconds, and we're all looking around at each other in the dugout, and then all of a sudden the announcer goes, and Hampshire win, and the fireworks go off, and sort of carried on running onto the field. It's mental. Some things are meant to be, right, even if they're done in the wrong way.
Guys, when did you find out about the runner, about that situation? Like, who told you that you could have lost it?
I think, from memory, it was Neil Mackenzie. I have got that right? He did play in 2010.
Yeah, he played. Yeah.
So he was. So we'd all the young lads, obviously at 19, 20, are up screaming, jumping around, trying to run on the pitch, pull each other over on the outfield, whatever it is. And I remember him just being as calm as anything. And he naturally is that character anyway. But I remember him just walking up to us all as we were kind of shaking hands and just mulling over the victory. And he was like, we should have lost that game. And everyone's like, what you on about? Of course we should have lost that game. Ran the last run to win. He's like, no, Jimmy and Dan were at the wrong ends. And we're like, oh my God. And then,
I love that. You've got to whisper it in case they whip the bails off.
Yeah, and then it all started to sink in that that's why the delay was sort of 10 seconds or so before the announcer announced us winners.
And then to cut forward kind of 12 years, we have the no ball finals. So I think it's at Nathan Ellis's bowling, 4 off 1 is required.
That's right. Yeah.
The ball's complete. You guys are off. The firework goes off. So you've had the kind of confirmation.
Do you remember the stewards?
Yeah.
The stewards had come onto the field. I remember seeing the press box and pointing. I'd like to take credit as the first member of the media who saw what was going on, pointing out there. It's a no ball. He's got his hand out.
And so it's no ball. All of a sudden we're back. We've gone from you guys have won to 2 off 1, 3 hits.
Yeah.
Again, in a moment of what I didn't realise was controversy after the fact. You guys have changed the field for the 3 hit, which I've always found really funny because there was this moment. I remember reading loads of like articles and analysis where it was like James Vince kept a cool head in like the most highest pressure situation.
You know what?
Like,
I didn't know that.
Did you not know that? Brilliant. I've got breaking news for you. You guys changed the field for the 3 hit. So it was another no ball basically, and so I'm that stressed me out. If you don't know that, that makes me think I might have made it up. I'm sure I haven't.
No,
I always remember laughing.
But you wouldn't. But if you were on the fielders, like, and Vince has said to everyone, like, go back to where you were. So much has happened in the last minute. There's no way people are remembering.
Yeah,
if they're at short fine or deep or
a backward point, jumping on each other.
An 11-0 field, just everyone out on the fence. But again, like to cut forward, you've had one such incredible finish. How do the two compare? Like, does one stick out as more kind of insane than the other? Like, if you had to relive one, where would you go?
I think Lank's one is probably actually more insane. You know, a lot of things happened, but
is that 2022?
Yeah,
2022. So actually, the 2010 one, although a lot happened, a lot of it was around like something you can't control, like the injury, right? Whereas 2022, Lanks firstly were absolutely cruising, so it shouldn't have got anywhere near that it did. But somehow, in typical Hampshire way, we managed to find ways in these big games of staying in it, and then often going on to win those ones as well. But when you feel like you've won like that, the excitement, the energy, and I've got a video still on my phone. We're hugging, and I've grabbed a stump and I've ripped it out, and then that news of the no ball, when everyone looks around, and I just throw the stump halfway across. And in that moment, you just think, well, this isn't meant to be. But Vincey, take that field out of it. Vincey was incredible at that moment. How he just brought us all together and just said, look, it's one ball. It's against the number 10, 11 batsman. We still got the best bowler in the world. And actually, they needed 2 to win because I think we would win on a tie.
Yeah.
So, and then it was just down to, I was at short fine leg, and I'll be brutally honest. If the ball come to me, we would have lost because my head was nowhere. It was just, and then we still should have lost that. Well, not still should have lost. A lot of contrarian views on that, and when the ball went through to the keeper, and they ran the first run, but I think one of the batsmen passed through the stump, and McDermott was kind of running to the end. And then all of a sudden, they're trying to run again, and he sprints up the other end and takes the wickets, and it was all just absolute carnage.
Can I ask when you're getting called back onto re-bowl that ball, and you've decided it's a no ball? What are your emotions to Nathan Ellis at that moment of time? Because I don't know if I'd have liked him that much. I'd have been, Nate, what have you done?
It's tough. Don't get me wrong. It definitely goes through your mind. But as a bowler that's bowled no balls I bowled a no ball in the first over of that final, right? Which goes unnoticed. And I think I'm right in saying Salt might have even hit the free hit for 6. So I feel like they got off to a flyer. They might have even been 8 for none off 2 balls, I think.
10. I was going to ask you about that. Actually.
There you go. Yeah. So if you strip it back, you could say the lads are thinking, what the hell are you doing? But it definitely crosses your mind. You're thinking, Nelly, this is the last ball of a final. You're 4 runs. You're bowling to a number 10. You're the best, arguably one of the best death bowlers in the world. Just stay behind the line.
Because I do remember I was looking at, again, it gets a bit too crickety, but was going through the scorecard and I saw like Phil Salt. You've got Phil Salt out in the final, and I see Phil Salt's got 10 off 3. I'm like, oh my god, 10 off 3 out means he was on 10 off 2, and just kind of the kind of mental torture of. Well, I don't know. I guess that's my question. When you're stood at the top of your mark defending 170, you like new first over, and after 2 balls they're on 10. Like, where are your like? Where's your head at in that moment? Like, are you still,
to be honest,
confident you can turn it around, or is it?
Oh, it's tough. I'll be honest, because I had knee surgery the winter before. You know, it was a real struggle for me to get up and go for that final. As I talked about, I had cramp 20 minutes before we're talking about me bowling that first over, and you know, you're trying to rally yourself up. You've got painkillers in, the adrenaline's running. You're like, right, you've just got to get through this 20 overs and give it your absolute all. And the adrenaline's running through you, but your body is not necessarily answering to it. So I'm charging into bowl, then all of a sudden you overstep and you're just like, oh my God, I've just ruined the whole day for my team. You know, and then those thoughts go through your mind like, oh, you're useless, all that rubbish. And then but you quickly have to, through experience, you know, and luckily, you know, you got out the next ball, and then all of a sudden your mind sets back to, right, we can still win this.
I'm a jet. I'm going to win. I'm going to win the whole thing.
Can I ask a question about on the back of that? This is not to make it. Cam will abuse me for saying this, but I've been on the field at finals day, and in
what role?
In a mascot race running capacity, and I came dead last, and that is by the by of this, because my one takeaway from one of many takeaways from running that was that it's the most football-y day of cricket, from an atmosphere like feral. Tribal, like genuinely quite humiliating crowd environment. Certainly that is how I felt. All I could hear was people laughing, and I just assumed they were all laughing at me running after the head of my costume that was 10 yards in front of me, and a long way behind everyone else. But from an actual, but you say that like top of your mark, 10 off 2, got to get this back. Like, does that kind of thing happen more on finals than any other day? Because it is like, it is so unlike what we are used to from a cricket crowd. Even 100 finals day, being there this year, like that is such a different environment to the monster they've turned the last finals day into.
Yeah, absolutely. And whether because there's not much between the ears for me, full stop. You know, I've actually always been one that hasn't actually. In the moment on the pitch, I actually don't tend to notice the crowd that much. I'll be brutally honest. You just get into this zone where you're just, you know, it's all about business and trying to win. But I've watched many of the people in the past in the front of the Hollies, you know, when they're fielding, and that atmosphere sort of, you know, in between balls, I can take it in, you know, and if someone's made a mistake on the Holly side of the ground, you do definitely feel the full impact of that. But actually, when I'm in the moment myself and in the battle and bowling, you know, I could be playing down at, you know, St. Cross Village cricket ground down the road, and it would be the same kind of thing going through my head, and it will all just be kind of background noise, which I guess is probably quite a good way to look at it, and probably quite positive on the outcome that I can produce, hopefully.
Would you ever run the mascot race?
Well, not with
not with your knees.
Just donate my knees to the final time to the mascot race.
It always upsets me so much when professional athletes go like, I don't notice the crowd, because you're in the crowd and you're like, we're affecting the game. People are like, I don't notice you at all, to be honest, mate. Like, it's great.
Keep screaming.
For the like,
my biggest skill is the ability to ignore you.
Yeah. Just for the last bit, it's got to round out this kind of half an hour, not nonsense, but just kind of indulging in the kind of other sides of finals day. This year we have Somerset, Surrey, Sussex, and Gloucestershire in the final 4. You've played against all of them. Kind of, where would your predictions lie if you had to say, I reckon it's these boys? Who'd you back in?
Yeah, well, firstly, up the South group again.
Yeah,
last 2 finals days.
It's just like when an English team reaches the final of the European Cup. You know, we all win.
We're all Chelsea now, aren't we?
We're all. Very good question. I think Sussex have played some great cricket this year, but I can't go away from Somerset. and it pains me to say it because they've probably become our biggest rival over the last sort of 10 years in T20 cricket for obvious reasons. I feel sorry have got a great team, right? But how many of them are not going to be there because of the England stuff coming up?
All of them.
Finals day, as you said, the final is huge, and the wicket is different, and they're accustomed to playing on the oval wicket, which is very quick, nips around the first couple of overs for their bowlers. And I'm looking down at their lineup and just wondering where they could win it with the slower bowlers in the final potentially. They'd probably make me eat my words now, but I just think Somerset have been there so many times. They've got all bases covered, and for me, they'd be favourites on the day.
Perfect. Chris, thank you very much for giving us your time. It's been really enjoyable kind of going down memory lane, finding out about the kind of the inside scoop of what final day is actually like. Nick really wanted to ask if you ever watched the finals day race but I don't know. I want to indulge him a little bit for his birthday.
I was intrigued because because it is that weird thing. Like it's the 20th anniversary of the race this weekend.
Yeah,
and I'm not the 20th anniversary of finals day.
No, it's not
the race. Okay, sorry.
Finals day. Do your research.
Beg your pardon.
Because the one thing with the race I do find really odd is that finals day has become a lot more serious over the years, right? It's gone from being when it was the 2020 Cup, it was a bit of fun and all that, and Liberty X were there, and to this point now where it is for a lot of domestic players, actually take out, I guess, like the final 100 is the biggest day, and it's the chance to put a name out there for franchise comps and all that stuff, and it's the one that everyone, and it is the comp that everyone is desperate to win, and yet you still have this weird 5-minute period when they let a bunch of comms bosses dress up as animals and run around the field and run around not just run around the field, but run around the field that other players are trying to warm up on.
Yeah, your answer to your question, Cam, is we absolutely watch it.
Perfect.
2 reasons. One, because it's good comedy. The second reason is because they're on our bloody field and we're waiting to warm up.
Well, Chris, well, funnily enough, we shared a field, me and you, just before the 2022 second semi-final that you won against someone. I was too unwell. I couldn't write about it. I genuinely didn't watch any of finals day after my race. You played someone. You beat Somerset, I think.
Maybe
the
year we won it.
Yeah. So you played Somerset, I think, and I delayed the removal of the inflatables because I was a minute behind all of the other animals. So sorry about
that. He's an athlete. So on Chris Wood's, one of the Chris Wood's finest days of his athletic career, with Nick at his lowest, combining forces.
Falling backwards onto an inflatable to finally cross the line.
Right. We're going to call it there. And we're going to, me and Nick, after Chris is gone, me and Nick are going to continue with a bit of analysis, I guess so. But until then, Chris, thank you very much. We've let Chris go. He's disappeared. He's escaped. And after he gave his opinion on who he'd think would win finals day from the perspective of professional cricket who's played against all 4 of those teams, I'm now going to ask Nick Friend of North Middlesex Third 11 for his opinion. To be fair, Nick, I reckon you've watched as much of the Blast live as anyone else in the country. So I want you to give me your 2 finalists out of Somerset, Surrey, Sussex and Gloucestershire. Why? And then tip 1 for the win.
Well, as you know, I like to sit on fences.
You're not allowed. There's no fences. You're in your 30s
what I'm
going
to say is that
steel.
I think the 2 teams who played the best cricket through the group stage were Sussex and Somerset. I actually thought Sussex were the best team in the group stage, and I think they're the most fun of the 4 finalists in terms of the way that they've developed over the last 12 months from becoming these sort of also rounds post that era where they had this gun team that never won the Blast, to being in the situation now where it'd be really cool if they won. Like Tamal Mills is kind of like the last man standing from the Galactico era of, obviously Jofra Archer's part of it as well, but he won't be there on finals day. That era of Rashid Khan and Danny Briggs and Jofra Archer and Tamal Mills and later Luke Wright, Phil Salt, forget guys here, even in that later era, but after those guys, when they brought in brought in Ravi Papara. Like, you've suddenly got a position now where Tim R. Mills, who was brilliant on this podcast earlier this year, talking about this actually, he'd never captained a game of cricket before until this year's blast. He's come in, done it his way with quite a young side, with brilliant overseas, and Dan Hughes, who, let's face it, no one would have tipped to be the leading run scorer in the comp when he first came over, but he's been fantastic. Guys like Harrison Ward and Brad Curry, who are weirdly on T20 only deals at Sussex. And I remember when those were originally signed, people went, "What? Like, you're gonna have a quiet summer," and suddenly they're going to be there at finals day. Ward made a big dent in that, albeit very small, chase against Lancs in the quarterfinal, and Brad Curry hasn't played as much as he would have done because he was at the T20 World Cup earlier this season. So they've got a really fun side. James Cole's a quality cricketer, and crucially, I think, with finals day in mind and all things Chris touched on there, he's a left-arm spinner who bats the top 5, which is massive on finals day as you go further into the comp, particularly them playing second semi and potentially the final if they're to beat Gloucestershire. And then Somerset, I think you'd say Somerset are probably quite big favourites, aren't they? As reigning champions, having sort of worked out how to win it last year. Will Speed's fit again after his hamstring issues. They've got Tom Banton having a brilliant summer. We're talking now, and while he's on the day after he made a championship 100 against Surrey, and it's hard to look past them, isn't it? But equally, Surrey will have quite a lot of their England players back. They'll have Dan Lawrence, Ollie Pope, Jamie Smith, which to start. They won't have Gus Atkinson, we don't think, and obviously they'll miss the guys who are. They'll obviously miss the guys who are the T20 international squad. There has been Sam Curran. There is some talk they might have Jamie Overton available if he's not involved on the Friday. Although I know he's been picked for the Wednesday game that will have happened by the time this has gone to record. What am I trying to say? They'll have played the Wednesday game by the time
they've played the Wednesday game.
Jamie Overton played in it, but and also, to be honest, that this was the semi-final last year, wasn't it? And although it was the second semi, Somerset played it much smarter than Surrey played it. If I remember correctly, I think 8 of Surrey's 10 wickets were caught on the ropes, and that speaks a bit to what Chris just said there about you being used to playing on a brilliant deck at the Oval for their blast games, and it is a bit tougher.
I thought that was really interesting what Chris said, and kind of wasn't something I'd necessarily kind of thought of myself in terms of, and I don't think many people think of in that, although T20 cricket's now this very developed and kind of like, in some ways, the kind of premier force of the sport, there's still this kind of perception that it's a hit and giggle and just kind of anyone can win on any day. And when Chris points out that Surrey have played a very set way, and that they've left grass on the wickets at the Oval, quick decks where they've opened up with their down wall and their seamers at the top of the innings, and they've nicked people off as they did in the quarter-final, you then carry that methodology into a final that's played on a wicket that's at 81 to 120 overs old, and he's gone, do they have the spinner to them?
Although to throw in the curveball there, playing the first semi-final, which obviously they didn't do last year, maybe probably does play into their hands side, does play to their strengths a bit more. Here
we go. So we can get a great prediction here. So we're going to go. Surrey are going to win the first semi-final because they're going to bowl first on a fresh one, and then they're going to lose the final, and then they're going to lose the final in dramatic fashion because they're going to be nowhere near on a slow wicket. And remind me, because I've forgotten, who's in the second semi-final.
Sussex and Gloucestershire.
And Sussex are going to win against Gloucestershire because Sussex have played the best cricket in the group stage. Surrey versus Sussex final. Sussex are going to win. You heard it here first on the Cricketer Podcast, the County Conversation Cricketer Podcast. I think that's pretty good. I feel like we've touched bases there.
We've covered 3 of the 4 semi-finalists, which is 3 quarters.
Have we not covered Gloucestershire?
I don't think in that little 6 minute period.
I'm going to let you speak about Gloucestershire for 30 seconds.
Well, I was there at their quarter-final at Edgbaston against Birmingham, and actually, the blueprint was how you win at finals. There, you get they were probably slightly below par with the bat, but then you
130.
It was but it wasn't a dissimilar pitch. I don't think to what teams will face. It was slow. It stopped. It took spin, you don't know if it'd be the same, but that's what it's historically ended up being a bit like, isn't it? In the last few years, as the days worn on. At the end, and also obviously we're talking September this time as well, rather than July. The last couple of years, when the whole summer's a bit further on. The ground staff have been worked off their feet for months, and it's always a great day. The pitch is kind of by the by, isn't it? And no, they played brilliantly. And if they bowl and field like that in their semi-final, they'll have a great chance because no one is going to score. No one's going to make a big total against the way that they played. They actually beat Somerset home and away in the group stage. They tied at the Oval. They lost to Sussex at off the last ball of the match in the group stage, and then were beaten a bit more comprehensively at home. I think, if I've got that right.
So they won a couple, they lost a couple, they've tied one.
Well, it's interesting because there is a bit of this head-to-head thing with them all. With them being 4 South Group teams, you do have this weird head-to-head thing coming into it, don't you? Everyone's played each other this year, but no, I think Sussex have been so good. Ollie Robinson's been a massive part of that, as well as Tim Mills and Dan Hughes, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think we'll, who knows? Who knows is the talk about sitting on the fence. My tip is who knows.
No. Our tip isn't who knows. Your tip can be.
My tip is who knows.
I'm going to say Surrey are going to bowl first against Somerset, nip out their top order, win this first semi-final. Sussex are going to win the second semi-final, led by Tim Mills with Ollie Robinson just hitting the top of off stump all the time, over and over and over again. But James Cox, they've got spinners coming everywhere. Then in the final, Sussex are going to beat Surrey because then Sussex are going to bowl first, and Surrey Seaman's going to be a bowl on the tiredest pitch of the day at the end.
And Sussex
are winning T20 finals. So,
do you know what's irritating? Because for our listeners, for our regular listener, hello, they will know that Cam has only done that so that if that does happen, he can clip it up and shove it all over social media.
Hey! Look, these things
that's
happen.
Not for that bit. Isn't for now. We should almost.
Right. Okay. We're ending the show. We're ending the show. No one is allowed to know the dark arts of being a freelance journalist. That's only for me to know, and no one else will ever find out. Right. Nobody covers county cricket like the cricketer. No one makes predictions like Cameron Ponsonby when they want a social media clip. And you can get access to all of our coverage of all 18 teams online from as this was £3.99 a month.
Should we do
what do you want, Nick?
I was going to say we could maybe, if we've got a bit more time, we could write down all the possible permutations. You could do the same thing for all of them.
But I reckon let's not do that. Let's not do that.
And he can lob that one out on social. Lob the relevant one on social.
I feel like this is I'm being this is libelous or scandalous or something like that. Some one of those things along those lines. Anyway, the cricketer they've won the slander. That's the one. They won the best cricket journalism prize for the last 6 years in a row. So get involved. Link will be in the show notes. Link will be in the show notes below if you want to subscribe. Thank you very much. We'll speak to you and see you again next week. Enjoy finals day if you are going. Enjoy it from the sofa if you're watching from home. Nick will be there. He'll give you a wave. I'm at a wedding. He's 30 now. I've only mentioned it 3 times. So go and say happy birthday.
30, eh? That's old.
Yeah. Goodbye.